coming tonight to hear about the Beach Road, Riverway Road improvements.
The purpose of the meeting tonight was, one, before we do anything, I wanted to have the community have an opportunity to come out, see what the proposals are, and get input. I think it's important.
To provide information on the short-term and proposed long-term improvements to the Beach Road, Riverway intersection. And we're going to do that by going over VDOT's fatal review crash study and the Chesterfield County's intersection analysis study. And I will turn it over to Rebecca.
All right, so I'll start by reviewing the fatal crash review. So I think it's important just to start by saying anytime there's a fatality on a VDOT roadway, it's our traffic engineering group's standard practice to do a safety review of that. So following the fatal crash that Mr. Carroll mentioned in December 2022, our traffic engineering group did a safety review of the intersection of Beach and Riverway. And this is a kind of an outline showing you all of the crashes that have occurred at that intersection over the last 5-year period. And I think it's important to note that a lot of them are angle crashes. So where there's a T-bone or something like that, which tend to be more severe, as was the case with the fatal crash that occurred in December 2022. So those are really the ones that are most concerning. They're the ones that result in a lot of injuries and what we're trying to mitigate. And two patterns kind of revealed from reviewing the crash data for the previous 5 years. And those were that traffic on Riverway is sometimes disregarding the stop sign, and it is kind of a strange angle, so I think that might be part of it, is that the stop sign is not readily apparent to people on Riverway. And then the other crash pattern that was revealed is if a driver is stopped on Riverway and they're looking to the left and seeing beach traffic coming eastbound, because that traffic is able to make a free flow movement onto Riverway, that driver on Riverway has a hard time distinguishing whether that driver is going straight through the intersection at Beach or whether they're turning onto Riverway, which sometimes led them to turn out in front of traffic, causing angle crashes. So with those, that crash pattern, the two recommendations that came out of that fatal crash review were to provide additional awareness of that stop sign on Riverway, so using additional signs that we now have flashing lights out there on the stop ahead and the stop sign, and some pavement markings to bring more awareness to that stop sign for drivers. And then to attempt to eliminate or reduce the issue with not being able to distinguish drivers on Beach Road and what direction they were going. We attempted the bowling pins, as Mr. Carroll mentioned. Obviously, that was not successful, which has led us to our next recommendation. And what we're really trying to do here is change driver behavior, is try to make people stop or slow down at the intersection so that a driver on Riverway can really tell, okay, this person on Beach Road is going to be stopped here, and what decision people are making, so that we're reducing decision making for those folks on Riverway, and they can understand what all the other drivers are doing and make an informed decision. And so our next step at this intersection is to convert it to an all-way stop. So it'll be a stop at all three approaches, both east and west bound Beach Road, and then the existing stop sign on Riverway Road. And we did some turning movements. I know there's a lot of concern with larger vehicles there. Trucks hauling trailers or campers or things like that. So we did do some modeling of turning movements to make sure that drivers would be able to navigate the intersection with that all-way stop in place. So you can see some of those turning movements here. And an important note to add before we implement this, we'll be doing some widening on the right-hand shoulder of Riverway as you approach the stop sign to make sure that drivers with larger vehicles have enough room to navigate that curve. And then the other thing that we're planning to do is, step up here, eliminate some pavement right here where that free flow movement was, to make sure that drivers aren't bypassing the stop sign and that we're getting the intended driver stopping at all 3 approaches before entering the intersection.
So in January of 23, January of this year, the county completed a study for the intersection that evaluated potential improvements that would address traffic volumes, existing volumes, and then future volumes, and also address the crashes that are occurring at the intersection. Next slide, please. So we evaluated 4 potential intersection improvements. One is a conventional or signalized intersection. The second is a continuous green T. I'll explain that later. Third is a roundabout, and the fourth is a stop control intersection. So everyone's familiar with the signalized intersection, and I know everyone's familiar with the roundabout. We talked about those. The stop condition is what we have today, where people on Riverway have to stop before they turn onto Beach Road. The new one is called a continuous green T. We've got a slide for that. So with a continuous green T, left-turning traffic merges into through traffic within a channelized, protected area. So if you're on Riverway and you want to make a left, you have to look to make sure no one is heading eastbound on Beach, but then you turn into this channelized with a concrete island area, and then you can merge into traffic. So you don't have to worry about what's happening to your right, you're just worrying about what's happening to your left. It's kind of crazy and not really a great fit for this intersection.
It's too.
And yeah. So you can see from the diagram, this is for a 4-lane road. It might be a great fit on Hall Street at Brad McNear Parkway, but not such a great fit here. But we'll talk about that more. What we did with our study is we focused primarily on congestion and safety. And you can see with this column here, the congestion column, we've got the 4 options. The first 3 options do pretty well. And the first 3 are a conventional signalized intersection, a roundabout, or a continuous green T. The one that doesn't do so well is the stop control intersection, kind of like what we have today. And I'll explain that with the next slide. So what's happening today at that intersection is people are on Riverway, come to the intersection, and they have to wait for traffic to go through on Beach. And they're waiting between 15 in the AM, 17 seconds, which is really not bad. In traffic engineering language, that's like you got a C, which is average, right? But when we look at the projected volumes that we expect in the area, that wait becomes about a minute for people. And so as traffic comes up to the intersection, they have to wait a minute, more traffic's coming up, so the line is getting longer, so you're experiencing congestion and delay at the intersection, which is why it didn't score as well. Let's just make sure I've got everything. Pardon?
That's in 2042.
Yes, 20 years. So when we design projects, we try to make them last for 20 years. That's the standard practice. It will take us some time to do the roundabout. It'll take us 5 years. If we had the money today, it would take us 5 years to get the roundabout constructed, if everything goes really well. So in the meantime, we're still trying to address the existing condition and existing problems that we have that Rebecca described a minute ago. So congestion and safety, right? So we also looked at safety. And to evaluate safety, what we were looking at was how well the options addressed or reduced conflict points. And conflict points are points in an intersection where vehicle paths cross and there's the potential for a crash. So on the left, that's a T intersection. There are 9 conflict points. And on the right, with the roundabout, there are 6 conflict points. The driveways in the influence of the intersection with a T intersection and a roundabout are still going to be there in both cases. So if you look at the safety column here, the continuous green T and the roundabout both score fairly well. When we evaluate the conflict points, we are weighting them also. So a conflict point where there's the potential for an angle accident, which is a more severe accident typically, more chance for injury, versus a merging or a rear end accident, that's not as severe. So those are weighted less than a severe angle crash. So they're weighted. And the problem with the continuous green T is it doesn't eliminate the angle crashes at the intersection, which is really what we've got the problem with here. So the roundabout is really the better solution for safety. So with all that in mind, the long-term recommendation, which you saw at the beginning of the meeting, is the roundabout, and that's our conceptual layout. Some people notice that we do show a bike and pedestrian trail on the north side of Beach Road. That's consistent with the county's bikeways and trails plan. And we are also, next slide, currently starting design on the roundabout, but we don't have it funded at this point. VDOT and the county have both submitted funding requests to try to get the money that we need to build it, but we don't know if we'll be successful getting the funding at this point. And like I said, if we do, it'll take us probably 5 years from when the funding is made available to actually get the project built. And VDOT, I think Rebecca already mentioned that they're trying to install the three-way stop or the Allway Stop by the end of the year.
By the end of the year, and as part of that, we'll have portable message boards in advance to let drivers know. We're planning to deploy temporary rumble strips in advance also to make sure drivers on beach are alerted to that change in traffic pattern. So.
I think with the stop condition, it will slow traffic down in the peak hours, which seems to be a general consensus that people need to slow down. So that will accomplish that. And with the volumes we have now, I don't think that you're going to see terrible queuing like we were showing before. The queuing on Riverway right now is 15 seconds, level of service C. It's not too bad. I don't think we'll see anything too different.